The man in the third rank has been ordered to give ground, to step backward in order, while a wall of iron points comes on at a walk. He cannot reach it. The order is Hannibal's. The pikes are Alexander's. That is the whole battle in one sentence. It takes the rest of the afternoon to prove it, because the maneuver Hannibal is building here is the one that destroyed a Roman army twice his size at Cannae, and it was designed to punish an army that attacks. So what does the most studied trap in history do when it closes on an army whose center was never the attack? Long afterwards, a Roman is supposed to have asked Hannibal who the greatest general had been, and Hannibal is supposed to have named Alexander. Probably a story rather than a record, but the ranking reads like a professional's judgment, and it points at the comparison the sources never got to run. So we are going to run it. Real doctrine, real weapons, real ground. Southern Italy. Both armies are far from home, and neither can take a city. Hannibal has no siege train. Alexander's is 1,000 miles behind him. The allied towns will open to whoever destroys the other, and only destroys. A beaten enemy who marches away intact leaves the cities exactly where they were, waiting. Both men need annihilation. That is why both accept a battle neither is sure of. Hannibal has around 40,000 foot and 10,000 horse. Alexander perhaps 35,000 foot and 6,000. Hannibal holds the cavalry advantage in numbers, Alexander in weight.
Roughly 2,000 companions, the heaviest shock cavalry on the field.
That imbalance will decide more than the infantry does. Hannibal chooses the ground, as he always did, flat, open, a shallow watercourse anchoring one end. It looks like a gift to a phalanx. It is the bait. The Cannae trap does not need the enemy to charge. It needs him to walk forward. An open ground is what invites a pike wall to walk. The Macedonian line comes on, and the sound arrives before anything else. Thousands of pike shafts coming down to the level together, a long rolling clatter, like rain starting on a roof. Then contact, and the trap begins exactly as designed. Hannibal's center gives ground because it has been told to, and because it has no choice. Spanish and Gallic infantry against leveled sarissas is not a fight, but a problem of distance. They cannot close, so they step back, and the line bends the way it is meant to bend. At Cannae, that bend became a bowl. The Romans drove into it, mass first, because Roman doctrine was to push the center through, and while they pushed, the African veterans waiting on both wings turned inward, and the cavalry sealed the circle behind them. Something like 50,000 men died in an afternoon. The bowl needs depth to work. Hannibal's veterans stand roughly 200 meters apart at their widest. The trap closes when the enemy center has come far enough in that the wings can meet behind it. 200 meters of penetration, and the jaws touch. Hannibal holds his wings where they are.
Let the center feel it.
Not yet the flanks. On the wings, his cavalry goes to work. The Spanish and Gallic heavy horse hits the Macedonian left. The Numidians go wide on the other flank, and they do not charge. They approach, throw, wheel away, come back. They are not trying to win the wing. They are trying to make it take a long time. The Macedonian left does not break, and the reason is ground rather than courage. Its outer flank rests on the watercourse, so the heavy horse cannot get round it, and has to push frontally into close-ordered squadrons that can trade a few meters at a time and reform. It bends slowly. Slowly is all Alexander needs from it, because Alexander is not letting the center run. This is the part that decides the day, and it is a decision rather than a property of the pikes. He has ridden to the join between the phalanx and his right, and he is pacing the advance by hand, halting the line to dress its ranks, pushing it a few paces, halting it again. The hypospists hold the seam on his right, so the phalanx never has to turn to protect its own shoulder. Every time the Carthaginian center steps back and opens a gap, the pikes do not chase it. They step, they dress, they wait.
Johnny! Gotcha!
He can do this because the phalanx is not how he wins, and he has never pretended otherwise. It is how he holds. Its job is to fix an enemy in place so the companions can find a seam, and a formation that goes hunting is a formation that opens its own flanks and stops fixing anything. So the pikes walk, and they walk slowly, and the ranks stay closed. The trap needs 200 meters. 40 minutes in,
Hold the line! Push them back!
it has been given 50. And that is Hannibal's problem, because the mismatch is now costing him faster than it is costing Alexander. His center was never meant to survive the afternoon. It was meant to be spent slowly, buying depth with its own retreat. Against Rome, the exchange worked, because Roman infantry came forward hard, and the bend paid for itself. Here the men in the center are dying at close to the same rate. Pikes reach 2 ranks deep before anything they carry reaches back, and they are buying almost nothing with it. Every minute the trade continues, he loses the same men and gains a few more meters of a curve that needs 4 times as many. So he has 2 options, and both are bad. He can hold and keep feeding the center, betting that the pikes eventually overcommit, and if they do not, his center is destroyed anyway, and the wings close on an enemy who never entered. Or he can turn the veterans now, at 50 meters instead of 200, spring a shallow trap while there is still a center left to pin the Macedonian front in place. Waiting costs him the army he needs to spring the trap with. Turning costs him the depth that makes the trap lethal.
I take the second, because the second still contains a battle.
The veterans turn inward. What closes is not an encirclement. Both wings swing in and meet the Macedonian flanks, not behind them, alongside them, on a front that is still facing the way it was facing. Instead of a ring, the Carthaginian line becomes a shallow U, pressing on 3 sides of a formation that has not moved far enough in to be surrounded. The phalanx does not have to turn around. It only has to extend, and a pike line under pressure from the flank can refuse its shoulder and keep the points forward. That is the structural turn of the battle, and it is where the direction changes. From this moment, Hannibal is no longer executing his plan.
Hold the flank!
He is improvising against the consequences of a plan that could not be executed. The man in the 3rd rank does not step back this time. There is no back. His own veterans are behind him now, pressing forward into the space he was using. He is being crushed between the trap and the thing it was set for. Hannibal has 1 move left, and it is a good one. He has spent the battle watching the same thing the Macedonians have, that this army resolves itself when Alexander commits the companions. There is no second man who can do it. So if the wedge can be made to commit early, at the wrong target, into ground it cannot get out of, then the trap does not need depth at all. It needs the enemy's best 2,000 riders parked in soft ground by the watercourse, while the rest of the line is settled without them. The Numidians break off and run. They go across the front of the Macedonian right in what looks like the collapse of a wing. Openly, at speed, across exactly the ground the companions would have to cross to reach Hannibal's flank. Behind them, past the broken edge of the line, is the soft going near the water, and the remainder of the heavy horse, turned and waiting. It very nearly works, and it should. A wing coming apart in front of the companions is the single most rewarding target on the field. Taking it would roll Hannibal's flank, free the Macedonian right, and finish the battle in a quarter of an hour. Alexander's own officers are already turning. What stops him is not intuition. It is what the ground shows. The Numidians are running in order. They have kept their intervals, they are not shedding weapons, and behind them, the grass is empty. No wounded, no unhorsed men, no dead. A wing that has actually broken leaves its casualties where it broke, and this one has left nothing at all, because nothing has happened to it. Alexander gives the order himself, and it is 3 words long.
Not them, not them. Let them run.
The refusal costs him, and he knows the price as he pays it. Those Numidians are the fastest thing on the field, and the only force that can screen a Carthaginian withdrawal. Letting them go means they will be intact and available later, and later is exactly when Alexander will need them destroyed, because his objective is not to win the field, but to end this army, and an army with its light horse still working can leave. He trades the annihilation he came for against the risk of losing his shock arm in a bog. It is the correct decision, and it is not a free one. Then he stops waiting and starts hunting. The feint has cost Hannibal something too. His fastest cavalry is now half a mile out in open country, selling a story nobody bought, and it cannot come back quickly. On the far wing, his heavy horse is still grinding frontally against a Macedonian left it cannot outflank, and the veterans, having turned inward to squeeze, have their own backs to open ground, with no screen behind them. That is the seam, and Alexander has been riding the line waiting for it. He does not send the companions at the veterans. Their front is armored, braced, and expecting exactly that. He sends them past the veterans' outer shoulder and into the gap the cavalry has vacated, a wedge going in behind a formation that has just committed itself to facing the other way. 2,000 riders do not have to break the African infantry. They have to arrive behind the men the African infantry is standing on. Hannibal sees it and answers, because he is not finished until the field says so. He tries to peel the inner wing back out of the squeeze to face the new threat, and the order is right, and it is too late by minutes. A formation mid-maneuver cannot uncommit at speed, and the men executing it are the same men holding the pressure on the phalanx. The instant they loosen, the pikes have somewhere to go. He sends riders to recall the Numidians. They are coming, and they are coming from half a mile away. The Carthaginian center goes first. The men who have spent the afternoon walking backwards break between the pikes in front and the collapse behind. And once the middle is gone, the two turned-in wings are two separate armies with a hole where their join used to be. Now the phalanx, which has done nothing all day but hold and dress and wait, finally has somewhere to walk. It advances into the gap it spent 4 hours refusing to enter, and it does it in order, points forward, the way it was always going to. This is the decisive moment, not the failed trap, which changed the direction of the battle, but this, the wedge behind the shoulder, and a line that cannot turn to meet it in time. Before we say who wins, the case for Hannibal deserves making properly, because it is better than the result. He read this enemy correctly. The Macedonian army did have one irreplaceable component. That component was a man, and that man had spent 15 years personally delivering the blow that ended battles. Putting a running enemy across his front, with soft ground and heavy horse behind it, was not a wild gamble. It was a bet on the most consistent behavior in his opponent's career, and it came down to whether one commander looked at the grass behind a retreating wing. Against a younger Alexander, first campaign, everything still to prove, that bait is taken, and this ends the other way, with the companions bogged by the water and a Macedonian army waiting for orders from a man who cannot give them. Hannibal did not misread him. He read a slightly earlier draft of him. But under these conditions, Alexander wins. The reason was visible before the first pike came down, and it never changed. The Cannae trap is powered by the enemy's own forward momentum, and Alexander's center was built not to supply any. A method designed to punish an army that attacks with its mass met an army whose mass was not the attack, and the cost of the mismatch fell on Hannibal, whose center had to be spent whether or not it bought depth. Every option he had after that was a choice between two versions of the same shortage. Hannibal does not die here, and he is not encircled, but he does not get away for nothing either. He pays for it. He feeds his last uncommitted infantry into the gap to buy minutes, spends the heavy horse on the Macedonian left to keep that flank busy rather than pursuing, and holds the line just long enough for the recalled Numidians to arrive and screen the withdrawal from the flank that would have rolled it. They get there. The army comes off the field southward, in order, still an army, and it is worth nothing to him. He needed this force destroyed, because destruction was the only thing that opened the cities. He leaves with a reputation, a reduced army, and a country that will now wait to see what happens next, the one outcome his campaign could not survive. The man in the third rank, the one told to give ground and did, is not walking anywhere. He never touched an enemy. That was the job. A reconstruction, not a record, and the assumption holding it up is a single one, that Alexander looks at the ground behind a running wing before he commits. Move that, and the whole afternoon moves with it, which is why the next reconstruction goes looking for the army that could make him charge.